And on to neighboring Kenya now, where a bruising battle appears set between the executive arm of government and the judiciary. Kenya's President Uhuru Kenyatta has sharply criticized the country's Supreme Court over the nullification of the presidential results in the August 8th poll. President Kenyatta says the judiciary is subverting the will of the people, a claim denied by the Chief Justice. Well, joining us now in studio to discuss this is Robert Nagila. He's been following all the developments on the Kenyan election here for us. Robert, is this a question of the judiciary exerting its independence, or is it subverting the will of the people as the executive has maintained?
Well, Beatrice, that's a really good question. It really depends on who you ask here. And it does appear to be a classic case of a struggle between the executive arm of government and the judiciary itself. Now, the judiciary, looking at this particular election, which is where these claims are coming from, insists that it will, as far as it's concerned, an election is not an event, but it's a whole process. So if one bit of that process is tainted in any way, then the credibility of that election is called into question. Whereas, as far as the president is concerned, he says that the reason he claims the judiciary is subverting the will of the people is because in this particular presidential election, the judiciary said that as far as the numbers who voted for Mr. Kenyatta and Mr. Odinga, the opposition leader, those were okay. There was absolutely no problem. The problem was in the process. So he says that it doesn't really matter with the numbers, but the process itself. And this will give our viewers a really good idea of what the two gentlemen, the Chief Justice and the President, are talking about. Let's just have a listen.
We have shown that contrary to the popular view, the results of an election in terms of numbers can be overturned if a petitioner can prove that the election was not conducted in compliance with the principles laid down in the Constitution and the applicable electoral law. What of the argument that this court should not subvert the will of the people? This court is one of those to whom the sovereign power has been delegated under Article 1(3)(c) of the Constitution. All its power, including the invalidating of the presidential election, is not self-given nor forcibly taken, but is donated by the people of Kenya.
Now that the Supreme Court has taken the narrow view that a presidential election can be overturned without reference to numbers, what becomes of the constitutional provisions that provide that presidential elections, and for that matter, all elections, are determined in a democratic society such as Kenya by numbers? I hold our steadfast position that the will of the people of Kenya was subverted by our courts.
But Robert, obviously this is a discussion that is going to be going on in the public domain for a while. But in the meantime, though, Kenya's Independent Electoral Commission has set a new date for a new presidential election now. The election has been delayed for a few days. Is the Electoral Commission giving assurance that this will be a free and fair election, or what do we expect moving forward?
Well, Beatrice, this is the other institution at the center of all the chaos, so to speak, at this particular moment. Now, it has already set a new date for the election, which is October 26th, which incidentally is Mr. Kenyatta's birthday. Now, Mr. Kenyatta's supporters basically are saying, look, we're going to give him a birthday present and make sure he's re-elected. He's promised as soon as he comes back, he will relook at the judiciary issue. But going back to the IEBC, the electoral body, the commission that is responsible for conducting the election, they say that they're putting all the safeguards in place to ensure that they follow through with the judgment and that they will be ready for that poll. However, Beatrice, and here's where the problem is, the opposition has said that it will make sure that no elections will be conducted in Kenya until reforms are instituted within the Electoral Commission, because they say that the ruling from the judiciary from the Supreme Court was very clear. There were irregularities and illegalities placed squarely at the door of the Electoral Commission. Mr. Kenyatta, however, says that as far as they are concerned, a new date has been set, the election will go on as planned. So we have to wait and see. A lot of intrigues involved as we get closer to that date. We will keep our viewers, of course, briefed on everything.
A lot of intrigues indeed, Robert, but in the meantime, the public is still remaining calm here. Robert Nagila with us in studio.